Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I just realized that on many of our recordings, I've had a mic drop.
Oh, yes, as in
might not have been intentional,
smacking the mic and throwing it on the ground. Yeah, I just hit my mic as we were loading up here, but thankfully...
made me think about it. I need to put a boom in here.
It was in that 5-second little grace period we get, so that's at least good. But anyway, today we are here, Dad, to break down that game that we just had. The Packers beat the Bears 20-19 on a last-second blocked kick to move to...
Karl Brooks gets the mic drop.
Yes, to move to 7-3. He dropped the boom, or did he? I don't know. Packers moved to 7-3 on the year, though. They are 6th in the NFC. And we're going to bring you everything from that game. A little bit of a deep dive, talking about what we liked from the offense, maybe a little bit less what we liked from the defense, and what we loved from the special teams, a bit of a change of pace for us. So we're going to be talking all about that, deep dive into everything. Before we get to that, though, just wanted to say, please subscribe if you're here. We would really appreciate it. Please leave a review. Please leave a comment. We would really appreciate it. Whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all three. It would be awesome for us. And then please give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet out whenever we have new episodes out. We tweet out, whenever there's roster moves, injury reports, other content from other Packers content creators. We're trying to make a blue sky right now, but we're having a little trouble making a separate account just for the podcast, but we'll be working on that soon. But Dad, should we just move into talking about this game? Because this was a wild one.
Yes, it was wilder than
wilder than we hoped.
Right, closer than we hoped.
That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, in a game where, the Packers were expected to win, you can say, the spread was 6.5. At the same time, I understand the argument that, hey, division games are kind of, always a little bit weird, can always be a little bit funky. At the same time...
And also always worry about those home dogs.
Yeah, exactly. When you're on the road in a division game, things always get weird. But we're going to be talking all about this game in just a second, though, Dad. Let's start off, though, with just a bit of news that we do want to cover really quick first before we start talking about the game as a whole. And there were a couple injury updates that we wanted to talk about. Since we last spoke, just a couple to talk about. Unfortunately, Jordan Morgan was placed on IR with a re-aggravation of the same shoulder injury that had been bothering him since the offseason. So he's going to miss at least 4 games, possibly more. We're not sure yet. And they added cornerback Robert Rochelle to the 53-man roster as the corresponding move there. Also, since we last spoke, Marshawn Lloyd has appendicitis. It has been a really rough go for Marshawn Lloyd. This was Adam Levitan put this out on Twitter. Late July, had a hip injury, missed almost most of training camp, most of the start of training camp. Then in mid-August, had a hamstring injury, which caused him to miss week 1. Then in week 2, he sprained his ankle and went on IR until now. And then today, or a few days ago, woke up with appendicitis, and the Packers activated him off of IR with plans to essentially put him on the non-football injury list. He's going to have to miss at least 4 games. There is currently no timeline, according to Tom Silverstein of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. That is just kind of all we know at the moment. But, Dad, a really rough go for both rookies so far in their rookie year, both Morgan and Lloyd. Obviously hurts the depth of the offensive line room. Obviously sets Lloyd back in terms of, getting some experience his rookie year, because he really has only gotten to play in 1 game so far. Any thoughts on either of those 2 injuries?
Yeah, we've barely even seen what Lloyd can do. I remember he's had one really nice run, I think, in there. That
he had one really nice run and one really nice run that was called back from penalty, and that's pretty much it.
And Morgan, every time it seems like maybe he's going to start getting more reps, more playing time. Well, nope, Gotta back it up again.
Yeah, and just on the Morgan front, the only thing I want to ask you there is, who do you think the 6th lineman is now? I only ask because at certain points in the year, we've had, Dillard be inactive as a healthy scratch. We've had Telford be inactive as a healthy scratch, and we've had Jacob Bunk be inactive as a healthy scratch. And so all 3 of them have seemingly just been, they decided they didn't want to have them that day. But all 3 of those guys, I would have thought would be the 6th, 7th, 8th guys. I mean, they presumably still are the 6th, 7th, and 8th guys, but which one of them do you think is up first? I guess it kind of depends on the position. I guess you could argue, Dillard would be the left tackle, Monk would be the interior, and Telford would be the right tackle. But what do you think on that one?
That's kind of where I'm at. That it might depend on who's missing, though. They could go, just go Monk, and then put Elton wherever.
Yeah. Although Yeah, that could be the case. Move Elton out to tackle if one of Walker or Tom misses some time. Because you're certainly not moving Ryan or Myers out there. But yeah, no, I could see that being the case. But it is just interesting that all three of those guys have been healthy scratches at some point or another. So it's kind of hard to tell what the coaching staff thinks of those other backup offensive linemen. But hopefully they can get Morgan back soon at, earlier side of 4 weeks out, and hopefully not any more than that. But those are the injury updates. And then we did have one more from in-game, and that was unfortunately that Jair Alexander, he was only able to play 10 snaps. He was questionable coming into this game with a knee injury. I believe it's the same knee injury he suffered against Jacksonville, if I remember correctly. And he missed the rest of the game after that. They asked Matt LaFleur rather, if he aggravated something or just felt like he couldn't play. They said, he tried to give it a go, but he ultimately just wasn't feeling right out there. Didn't feel like he could really play out there, and ended up just not being able to play the rest of the game. Really tough, missing one of your better players on defense there for most of that game and possibly going forward.
Yeah, it sounded like he didn't do anything more to it based on how the question was worded and how LaFleur responded. But still not ready to go.
And not great, yeah. Especially coming off a bye, obviously not ideal. And it is at least some good news that he didn't further tweak it sounds like. But unclear on, it sounds like he felt like he could play and then he couldn't. So is this going to be one of those things where it's like going to be really hard for him to know how he's feeling going into every single game? It's just obviously not ideal, especially when they're a little bit thin at corner right now. But we'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll be keeping an eye on the Morgan injury. We'll be keeping an eye on the Lloyd injury and all other injuries going forward. But hopefully it won't be too much keeping an eye on it. But yeah, keep an eye once again at Father Son Packer on Twitter for injury updates on all of these things. But Dad, moving on to this game, starting us off, gut check. How are you feeling in the moments after this game? How are you feeling during this game? What was your emotional reaction?
So at the end of the game, once I get down to the field, I was like, okay, this game is lost. And because I was streaming the game, which always has a little bit of lag, I was also following it on social media at the same time, get a little preview. And so at that point, I stopped checking social media so I could have hope for just a little bit longer. It's like, okay, let me just not get the bad news for as long as I can. And then it turned out special teams to the rescue.
Special teams to the rescue. And yeah, my gut check was just, I will take an ugly win over a pretty loss any day of the week and twice on Sundays. But boy, oh boy, were we ugly. Specifically the defense. The defense was really ugly. I was
the worst defensive performance of the season.
This is one of the worst defensive performances I can remember. I'm having a hard time coming up with one off the top of my head where I was more like, in terms of the context of who you were playing against, how much the Bears offense had struggled. We're going to talk all about the defense going forward, but I was very disappointed with the defense. This is one of the worst defensive showings I've seen from Green Bay in probably the last 5 years. The stopping point where I'm like, I 100% know that this defensive performance was worse is the NFC Championship game against San Francisco. That's the only one where I'm like, I am 100% sure that was worse than today. But today was bad. Today was pretty bad, especially, like I said, considering the context of the way the offense you were playing against had been struggling coming into this game. And just no force, no movement, no push. We're going to talk all about the defense, though, Dad.
Yeah, I just gave a quick look. In the pregame, we talked about how going into the game, Chicago was 30th on offense by DVOA. Mm-hmm. They moved up 3 spots.
Yeah. I mean,
from this one game.
They hadn't scored a touchdown in 23 straight possessions, and they let them score twice in this game. And they were just getting obliterated up front by the offensive line. We're going to talk all about it, though. But, Dad, let's move on to our game breakdown. We're already talking about it. Biggest moment of the game in this one. We go by ESPN win probability added. Biggest moment of the game was obviously the blocked field goal. Although if you look at the end of that win probability graph, it is spiky. It is going back and forth.
There's an earthquake going on there. It's a 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was a crazy one, but that changed the win probability from a 70% chance of the Bears winning to a 100% chance of the Packers winning, which is a change of 70%. So, I mean, what a play. That's the thing is, like, as frustrating as this game was, that's going to be a really fun moment to look back on in terms of, like, you beat a division rival on the road.
This is going to go down for Bears fans. This is going to go down with it's Cobb again.
Oh, I don't think it's going to go down with that because, well, I don't know. But this is now 11 straight. over the Bears for the Packers. That is now the longest win streak in the rivalry, breaking their own record that they set in the 90s of 10 games. So that's really exciting and awesome. They have not lost to the Bears since 2018, so it's been 6 years now, which is, also great. You love to see it. But Dad, let's start talking about, one side of the ball and then another. Do you want to start with the offense or the defense? What do you want to start with? Let's start with the defense so we can start negative, because I think that's where I think more of the conversation needs to be had. Is the defense in this one was really, really rough. Let's start off, though, with what they're saying, what the coaching staff is saying. Any quotes on this one? Any thoughts?
So let's see. I noticed you don't
have a quote about the defense as a whole. You were just like, let's be nice. Let's pick a quote about a player.
I was listening to LaFleur's presser, and so I was like for nuggets on the defense. So he was talking about Brenton Cox. Somebody asked him a question. He says, it's great for everybody to keep your head down and continue to work, and then making the most and maximizing your opportunity. Thought he played really well. Obviously, he was impactful in the game, and not only on defense, but he had the play on defense where he drew a personal foul. He kicked the guy's butt in front of him, drove him back so far. The guy got frustrated, headbutted him, and he didn't respond.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not easy to do. And so that's I think in contrast to some of the other plays where they've taken stupid penalties.
Yeah, exactly.
This time they didn't.
Yeah, and I will say, Brenton Cox, one of the things coming out of the draft and one of the reasons he went undrafted was because during his time, I think at Georgia and Florida, I believe.
Georgia and Florida.
Yeah, I knew it was Florida, but not Georgia. But he had troubles with the locker room at Florida and Georgia, and I think had a reputation as a bit of a hothead. And so for him to, keep his cool when he got headbutted there, I think he got in a fight with teammates in one of those locker rooms. I can't remember.
And then also, I think he got in a fight on the field with an ex-teammate. And he was playing for Florida. I have it right. Playing for Florida against Georgia.
He played for Florida last, so that would make sense. But yeah, so for him to keep his cool there is really awesome, because that 15 yards was big, and they could have ended up with offsetting penalties there. But shout out to Brenton Cox, and shout out to Brenton Cox overall. He played well in this game, and we'll talk about him a second. But Dad, let's start with the negative for defense, because I don't have a lot of positives to talk about.
Oh, I guess do you want to go with that? But
well, I guess we go. I just don't.
We
think
want to go negative, positive, positive, negative.
I think we'll go negative, positive, negative, positive, because I think
this is any kind of sandwich.
Totally out of order. But I think the more important conversation to be had is about the defense and the struggles that they had in this game. So just to set the table for you a little bit, like I mentioned, I think this is one of the more disappointing performances from the defense I've seen in a while. The Bears, like I mentioned, hadn't scored a touchdown in 23 straight drives, 2 straight games, and you let them score 2 different ones. The Packers allowed to the Bears drives of 8 plays, 10 plays, 13 plays, 10 plays, 11 plays, 12 plays, and then finally 7 plays, which could have been more with more time. And there are no other drives in there. I didn't leave any out. There were no drives where they got a 3 and out. There were no drives where they five plays and punt. Every single drive. The
closest thing we got to a 3 and out was 8 plays.
Exactly. Every single drive was a long, drawn-out drive. And just some numbers for you. Bears coming into this game had a 39.9% success rate, 5th worst in the league. In this game, they had a success rate of 49.3%, which would be 3rd on the year behind only the Ravens and Chiefs. Bears coming into this game were 31st in the league in 3rd down conversion rate at 28.69%. The Packers allowed them to go 9 of 16 on 3rd down, which at 56.25% rather would lead the league on the season. And then even when they got stops on 3rd down, they let the Bears go 3 of 3 on 4th down. So they really went pretty much 12 of 16 on continuing drives. I mean, they just could not get off the field. They could not get pressure. They were getting bullied up front. It was a really rough day for the Packers defense against an offense that I know they coming into this game had a new offensive coordinator, and obviously that makes preparing for it harder. And that was something we talked about in the pregame. It was something we were nervous about. It was like, is a new offensive coordinator going to throw off your preparation for this game? And I think it did, but at the same time, it shouldn't be this big a difference. Like you got just moved up and down the field, walked up and down the field all game long.
You don't think an offensive coordinator is going to change it from one of the 3 worst offenses in the league to one of the top 3?
Exactly.
I mean, they did change a lot of sort of stylistic. I don't know about like play calling design, but they changed some sort of core principles.
They were getting the ball out quick. Caleb Williams was really killing them with his legs. But I mean, for me, I'm going to let you. I'm rambling a little bit here, but for me, it starts with the D line, right?
Yeah, so we could talk a little bit more sort of big picture things. So This was their second worst performance by PFF on the year, but the worst was against. So that's not corrected for opponent.
I was going to say, who was worse? When did they play worse?
They're worse against the Eagles in terms of PFF grade on offense, but the Eagles are 7th in the league on offense, and the Bears are.
And they were playing on a
20s?
slip and slide.
And they're playing a slip and slide. That game was a mess. Yeah, and so if you actually corrected for performance, then it would be, of course, much, much worse. And as I mentioned before, they managed to, with just one game out of 10, boost their DVOA by 3 spots. They were third worst in the league by coverage grade for Green Bay, or third. There was a Green Bay's third worst coverage grade. Their pressure rate against the Bears, I think you mentioned some of this, but it was just half of the season average. So it's like 20.5 versus the season average of 38% given up by the Bears.
Yeah, no, I thought the D-line was the biggest problem in this game, both against the pass and the run. I have a lot of numbers for that, but I'll let you continue.
It felt like that Green Bay threw Caleb Williams a lifeline, giving him his highest passer rating, highest QBR, highest PFF passer grade, and highest EPA per dropback since week 6 against the Jags.
And he played well.
Before things really went south.
Yeah, and I don't want to say this is, I don't want to totally dismiss like his performance. He played well. He got the ball out fast. They had a 2.42 time to throw. Only Tua is really close to that on the year, so he was getting it out like as fast as anyone but Tua, and Tua is like usually an outlier in that metric. So for him to be close to Tua is saying something. And he ran a lot. He really killed them with his legs. I think he scrambled 5 times for 49 yards and then also had 4 designed runs for another 21 yards, if I remember correctly. So both breaking the pocket after, things weren't there and design runs. Packers had no idea what to do with that. They tried Edgerrin Cooper as a spy, and Edgerrin Cooper's a super fast linebacker, and Caleb Williams just beat him to the edge like 3 or 4 different times. Like pretty easily.
Well, Williams was way faster than I expected. I didn't realize he was. I mean, people talk about how he has some running ability, but you could have a variable amount of speed. He was much.
I thought he was quicker than fast, but he's got some speed to him too.
Yeah, and in part, Cooper took a bad angle, but I think it also because
I think he didn't expect Caleb Williams to be that
Caleb
fast.
Williams was faster than he expected when he took that angle twice, though.
Yeah, and they cleaned it up a little. They cleaned it up a little in the second half, and I was like, at halftime, I was begging. I was like, you cannot keep spying a linebacker on him. He is killing our linebackers. Spy a safety. Put Bullard in that role. I don't know what you need to do, but it can't be a linebacker anymore.
Yeah, and they just kept giving him, avenues to escape and run with over committing on pass rushes, either upfield or inside.
Which is so weird because they had been so good against mobile quarterbacks so far this year.
They just didn't have the mobile. They just didn't use the mobile quarterback plan.
Hurts, Richardson, Kyler, all 3 of them, they pretty much took away the running component of the offense for the quarterback. And at this game, they just let him run all over him.
Yep. Other things I had is, they were doing almost nothing in coverage.
Let me. Can I move on to the defensive line? Because I think the defensive line is the main.
Why don't you go to defensive line stuff next?
The defensive line, I think, was the where it all starts, where it all ends in this game, because they were really bad, really, really bad. The whole front 7 really was awful in this game. Some numbers for the pass: just a 20.5% pressure rate would be dead last on the season. To a team that had been allowing the 5th highest pressure rate in the NFL. So that's bad. And I get that, some of those numbers for Chicago are a little bit inflated because they've been missing their starting tackles and they had them back in this game, but they're missing their starting left guard. I think Tevin Jenkins is their left guard or the right guard. Believe their starting left guard, and the interior just did nothing all game long. They got absolutely bullied up front the entire game. And when they did get pressure, like we mentioned, Caleb Williams was able to just escape it fairly easily, 5 scrambles for 49 yards. And against the run, they had a stuff rate of just 8.8%, which would be worst in the league on the year. And then 2.13 yards before contact just to their running backs. Which would be 4th worst overall on the year. But those other teams' numbers, I couldn't split them away from scrambles and running backs. So it might be worst overall. But yeah, they were getting no contact in the backfield. They were not stopping the run. They're getting no pressure. They had a couple of sacks, but it all culminates in the fact that even when they did get sacks, even when they did get pressure, they usually let them scramble. And then even when they did get sacks, 3rd and 19, end of the game, you have a chance to end the game and win the game, and you let them convert? Really? On 3rd and 19?
With the game in the line.
Like, come on. Like, it was just a really, really miserable, disappointing, bad, just got obliterated up front all game long on defense. And I did not have many positives on the defensive side of the football. Any other negatives, Dad?
Yeah, so a couple more things. So like the coverage is about the only one pass breakup and no interceptions. So just basically not getting hands on the ball in this game.
No hands on the ball at all. Like this entire game.
And on third down, we talked about the run game, the rush defense, and third down. They gave the fifth worst EPA per rush on third down on the week, and the fifth highest rush yards over expected per attempt on third down.
Yep.
And they really got punished outside the tackles in the run game. Giving up the fifth most yards before contact per attempt and the seventh most yards after contact per attempt when the Bears are running outside the tackles.
And I'm a little bit, Preston Smith was one of their better edge run defenders. He was. And I wonder if that's going to be something that is maybe suffers a little bit without him. And it was even your good players, though. Xavier McKinney got his ankles absolutely snatched by DeAndre Swift. Completely turned around on that touchdown run.
I yelled very loudly when he got,
what was even going on out there?
Set aside there. Yeah. He just really got lost on that one.
Had him lined up 1-on-1 and just didn't get him. Yeah, they were running all over the Packers all game long, anything they wanted. And what even was the one pass breakup? That's what I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember the time we got a hand on the ball.
I think had one early. The one pass breakup was credited to Quay Walker.
And Quay really struggled in this game. I thought he had a really, really rough game. I know PFF thought his game was okay. I was like, man, come on, dude. We need a play here. Because there was the goal line touchdown run at the end of the second quarter, at the end of half, with 7 seconds left. Quay Walker's there. He's right there in the hole, 1-on-1, and just gets driven back into the end zone. And then another play later, he's blitzing Caleb Williams, and he's got him 1-on-1, and he just stops his feet. I get that at that point, like he had scrambled on you a billion times, and so you want to throttle down a little bit, but he just he stops his feet, and Caleb Williams just completes it right past him. And Quay Walker really struggled in this one. He wasn't the only one, but it felt like every single time he was he was out of position a lot, but then when he was in position to make a play, he just wasn't making the plays. And man, what a frustrating day for the defense. Sorry, Dad, I'm rambling. Go on.
Oh, it's okay. I had that most of my things, though. They also gave up, not surprisingly, that they gave up the most, so many yards before contact and so many yards after contact, that they gave up 7.3 yards per carry outside the tackles.
Yeah, I was going to say they weren't tackling well either, and I think specifically they weren't tackling the receivers very well. Like a couple different screens to DJ Moore that went for like an easy 10 yards. And I get that he's very good with the ball in his hands, but like we had guys there. Like we were in position to kind of hem him in and make a play on the ball, and then or not make a play on the ball, but make a tackle, and just didn't. Man, it was rough. It was a rough defensive performance. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that to really mention on defense.
I mean, part of it you can just see we only had, because they were able to move the ball on us so consistently, we only had 3 real possessions in the first half.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we talked about it. They moved the ball at will all game long. I mean, like we mentioned, the shortest drive they had was 8 plays. Every single other one was just moving it down the field. And I guess you can say they stopped him in the red zone a couple times, but or they held him to field goals at least. But it was just, I mean, here's the question. Yeah. Are you at all worried that this lays a blueprint for other offenses, where if you get the ball out fast and you just get it in the hands of playmakers and then you run the ball efficiently to the outside, the Packers can't stop you? Are you worried at all about that?
I just don't think every team wants to do that.
I mean, yeah, I guess, but the good teams do, right? You look around the NFC, the Lions have the playmakers to get the ball out fast to their guys and make plays in space. The Eagles have the playmakers to get the ball to their guys quick and, make plays in space. The Niners next week have the playmakers to get the ball.
The Niners
quick.
Might do it as a Shanahan, but I think a lot of teams like to hunt the big play and are not just going to go, 1-2, hit it.
I think if they're watching what the Packers put on film this past week, it's like, okay, like the Packers didn't really give up too many big plays, a couple of runs here and there. The Swift touchdown run comes to mind. a couple other plays here and there, but for the most part, they just got, nickel and dime down the field all game long. Like they that's the thing, is the Bears faced a ton of third downs. Like 16 third downs is kind of a lot, but the Packers just let them convert every single time because, and we talked about it coming into the game. It's like, yeah, the Packers don't get any pass rush, but somehow they're a very good third down, like, defending team. It's like, well, they weren't in this one, and maybe hopefully that's not a trend, but it was not good. Anything else?
I think not having Jair hurts.
But that can't be the only reason. I mean, they've not had Jair before. Like, it hasn't been that bad. I don't know.
But I think it changes the way maybe changes the way they're willing to blitz.
But even when they blitzed, they were terrible in this game. They were awful blitzing in this game. I have the numbers for you if I can just pull them up really quick. The Packers,
but they can't be secure on the back end without their top cover corner.
But we talked about it already. They weren't good blitzing coming into this game in terms of EPA per play. Like, they hadn't been getting home with blitzes all year.
This is true.
Like,
they tried some simulated pressure, mixing things up, and they just weren't getting any.
They never got home. I don't think they even had pressures on the blitz like in this one. Like, even when
they mixed up, they did a lot of, like, they put a lot of people at the line and then dropped 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, and I mean,
that never worked either.
They were trying some things at least, but it just felt like they never found their footing in this game. Like, they got knocked on their heels, and then they were just trying to get above water for the rest of the game, right?
It seemed like at the very end, well, not quite the very end, they finally got their feet under them on those 2 plays in a row until they then gave up the first down after getting them to 3rd and 19. They got back-to-back sacks.
Yeah, so I just
like, okay, now they're doing something.
Yeah, and then they immediately gave up the conversion, and that was so backbreaking on 3rd and 19 to give up back-to-back big plays there.
When Enigbari, like, missed him on the sack attempt there, and he ducked under it.
Yeah,
that really hurt.
NFL Pro has them blitzing 9 times, 1 pressure on 9 blitzes. Like, you're not even hurrying them up, and it did feel like at the end of that game they were just spamming the blitz button because they were panicking. That's how it felt to me, at least. I don't know about you. There were a few plays there at the end of the game where I'm just like, you're just blitzing to blitz because you have no other ideas of what to do. Like, you're just searching for answers, and they're ready for every single blitz because they're throwing in 2.4 seconds. Of course the blitz isn't going to get home.
But that's the problem. And that was they're throwing like a second faster than they had been on the year.
Yeah.
Crazy amount different. But
you
than what they'd been doing for the season.
A whole 3 quarters of that, like, you got to be ready for it eventually.
This was the thing. I was like, the things that made us think, which are also kind of bad things for me. I might as well get that out of here. It just seemed like they weren't prepared either for Caleb Williams scrambles or for the quick passing game, and it took them forever to adjust. If they ever did.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like, I get not being prepared for it. Totally. It's a completely different offensive coordinator. It is totally different from what they had been doing. They had not been running him very much at all. They had not been passing it very quickly. Totally different from what you probably saw in a film from weeks 1 to 10. By halftime, you gotta make a change because you're getting shredded.
Yeah, you got to be up on the receivers more when they're throwing the ball so quickly.
Yeah, and I do think that, we talked about it coming.
That's another thing without Jair. Okay, let's put all our corners up, pressing on the receivers, but none of them can actually cover.
Well, I was also going to say, we talked about coming into this game. One of the things that we talked about was the strength of the Bears is all of their receivers, especially without Jair in. Well, with Jair, you could say Jair wins one of those one-on-one matchups, but without him, all those receivers are better than your corners. Like, just on paper, they're better than your corners. So that's an issue as well. But no, yeah. And that was something that made me think was just like, and in the second half, I do think it felt like they did better, stopping him from running, stopping Caleb Williams from running a little bit in the second half. So it seems like they maybe made an adjustment there, but man, they still got just the ball moved at will on them in the second half. And, oh man, rough. But Dad, let's move over to maybe some positives for the defense. Maybe
like how you said that you said that questioningly.
Positives?
Do we have any kind of?
I have a couple. What do you got?
I have a couple little things. Really, just sort of minor things. Like, well, Jair in his 8 coverage snaps, he wasn't targeted.
Okay. That's pretty
so
good.
If only he could stay out there.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks that he's missing time now.
And TJ Slayton had the 8th best PFF pass rush production grade, I guess they call it, amongst interior defensive linemen, and he had his first sack since his rookie year in 2021.
But
he basically,
I didn't realize it had been that long.
And then
Caleb
I
Williams
looked
just
through
ran
it.
into him too. Like it wasn't.
Well,
even
and then
really
he was like,
attack.
"Okay, let's see if you can keep on your feet with 350 pounds on your back."
Yeah, he's just
You know,
like,
so he
all
literally
right.
like just jumped on top of him and collapsed.
Yeah, I think he was just as surprised as Caleb Williams was. Probably he's like, "Whoa, where did you come from?" Let me just make sure I don't let you just escape out like we let you do the rest of the game.
Their average target separation wasn't so bad. It was 10th best on the week at 3.2 yards. So
interesting.
yeah,
I guess.
So
I guess they were
was
there. It's just they never really made many plays on the ball. Huh?
Here's an interesting stat looking at NFL Pro. Green Bay had the third fastest get off on the week.
I was looking at that too. They were actually getting off the ball somehow, and then it just didn't matter.
Behind only the Colts and Seattle, and I think Seattle ended up with like the second best sack percentage, but they only had the seventh best sack percentage. That sack percentage would be good enough for 10th on the year and better than their season average. So it was like 7.7%, better than their season average of 6.8%, which is 50th on the year. However, that's not taking into account the opponent, where Chicago was giving up the highest sack rate at 11.2% for the year. So well below expected.
I'm most disappointed, I think, like thinking about it, in the interior. Like, why are Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt just invisible for the entire game against below average, like, let's be fair, below average interior offensive linemen. And one of them wasn't even a starter.
Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to remember now. Was there a play where Wyatt got into the backfield?
Not that I remember.
Nothing really happened, or was it canceled by a penalty? I can't remember now what I remember seeing.
It was, they weren't getting in, like we mentioned, they weren't pressuring the quarterback. They weren't getting in the backfield on run plays. Like, they were doing nothing up front all game long. The good things I wanted to mention, though, since we were talking about positives, so we forgot for a second, but we're back. I do like that Carrington Valentine seems to have passed Eric Stokes on the depth chart. That's, I think, a positive for the defense overall. Valentine per PFF played 64 of 71 defensive snaps, while Stokes played only 4 snaps total. So that's at least something. I think that's a positive for the defense. I think Stokes has been better than him for pretty much I think that Valentine has been better than Stokes for pretty much the entire year. And so that's good. And then the other thing I wanted to say was I thought Rashawn Gary had a solid day. Not amazing. PFF had him with 5 pressures. NFL Pro had him with 3. He did have a sack, which was big on that second down to make it 3rd and 19. Obviously, it didn't really end up mattering, but they did get it to 3rd and 19 there. Would have been a massive, massive play, one of the plays of the game, if they had actually gotten a stop there. And then he had 5 stops in the run game, which is pretty good. And a stop is a play that results in a negative EPA, negative expected points added per next gen stats. So that's at least something. I thought Gary had a nice day. So,
Yeah, and that run stop percentage on the week, I think it must be amongst like defensive front, was 3rd highest amongst qualifying players with 8 snaps or more.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like a fantastic day. He had like a solid day. He had a fine day. And the fact that he's not really getting much help up there, I think, to me, boosts the fact that, yes, it was like the numbers are fine. They're not amazing, but he's getting no help. There's no one else doing anything. The thing that made me think, though, in this game, Dad, you already mentioned yours, and so I figured I'd mention mine. Brenton Cox almost having the exact same number of snaps as Lucas Van Ness. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if that's a good thing at all, but it did make me think.
Our UNFA is going to be moving ahead of our first round draft pick soon.
That's why I'm like, I'm not sure if it's a good thing. The one, like, you can look at him and be like, wow, Brenton Cox, like, really making some strides. And he looked fine in this game.
He had a sack.
Yeah, it was unblocked, and whatever. And he had a tackle for loss that was also
tackle
unblocked.
for loss.
They both were unblocked, but whatever. You got to make the plays. No one else is making these unblocked plays, so it can't be that easy. But the fact that your first round pick is like, I think he had like, it was like 25 to 22 snaps, if I remember correctly. I forgot to write it down.
Yes, 25 to 22.
But the fact that your first round pick is, dead even with your UDFA, second year UDFA, not great. Not great at all.
And Lucas Van Ness had the lowest PFF defensive grade on the team for the week, 33.1. It's
not good enough. They need more. They need more from him. They need it, and they need it desperately. They need it desperately more from him.
Yeah, and his run defense grade was only 40.
Yeah, I mean, and for reference, average is 60, so 40 is very bad, very, very, very bad.
He hit 60 on his one coverage snap.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I mean, they just need him to be better, and I don't know I don't know where you go from there. There's nothing really else to say. Anything else on the defense, though, Dad, or should we move over to the offense?
Did I have anything more? Yeah, you gave a little shout out to Brenton Cox. I think.
Yeah, he was solid. It wasn't spectacular, but he was solid. He looked like he can be an NFL edge rusher, solid rotation guy, which is all you really want from an UDFA. So
yeah, I mean, he looked like he was moving pretty well. I think his
he wasn't any worse than any of their other edges. So
he looked like he was moving fast.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there was I was wondering who's gonna get those snaps, like Mosby or Cox, and it seems like it's gonna be Cox so far. So
yeah, that was something we were discussing, that we were expecting Mosby until there was a quote from, was it Gutekunst or somebody about Cox?
It was Hafley. Hafley mentioned that he was excited to see him out there. So
yeah, and Cox had twice as many snaps.
Yep. So I guess we'll see if that persists, if that was a matchup thing. But he definitely was solid in this one. So he'll hopefully earn more snaps going forward, and hopefully Van Ness can bounce back in this next one. But Dad, let's move over to the offense and let's start off with what they're saying. What's the coaching staff saying on the offensive side of the ball in this one?
Okay, I'm all messed up since we're doing this in reverse order. But LaFleur in his pressers, mostly he spent a lot of time fielding questions about Love. So regarding Love, he said, I thought he was moving around like we've been accustomed to seeing. He looked healthier than he had been. The last pass to Christian Watson, there was pressure in his face. Being able to deliver that ball, I was really happy with his play. He talked about how you got to stand in there, you're going to get blasted. I think it's another phrase he used about that play, just standing in there and delivering the ball when you're going to get smacked. He also said, somebody asked specifically about the checkdowns, whether that was a plan or not going in. And he said there were a couple of plays where there was busted protections and Love was able to hit the checkdown. So he's thinking it wasn't necessarily like a big change in emphasis, but that Love was seeing where the ball needed to go, essentially what LaFleur was saying.
Yeah. And, I know I mentioned we'd start with the negative and end with positive. I think we should start with the positive because I think it was mostly positive from the offense in this one. And I just wanted to, since you're kind of leading me into it, you're kind of segueing me in, I want to talk about Jordan Love because I thought he was really good in this game. Outside of the pick. The pick was bad. The pick was not good. And I know we can't keep doing this forever where it's besides the interceptions, he's actually playing really well because the pick was
right. Besides the interceptions, how did you enjoy the show?
Yeah.
Mrs. Lincoln.
The pick was different than his other picks, though. It wasn't like a "what are you doing" decision. It was just a bad throw, which I don't know. I don't know if that's any better, but at least it's different. I did, though, think his decision making was a lot better in this one. Overall, 12 of 17 for 261 yards with a touchdown, a pick, and then he also ran 4 times for 18 yards and a rushing touchdown as well. So 2 touchdowns on the day for him. 15.4 yards per attempt. 15.4 yards per attempt is kind of nutty. That's kind of insane. And even with the pick, he was still 5th on the week in EPA per dropback. He was 4th on the week in success rate. He was 4th on the week in completion percentage over expectation. And then under pressure, he was really good in this game. He was pressured 6 times. On those 6 dropbacks, he was 3 for 3 for 72 yards. He took only 1 sack, and then he scrambled twice. Once was unsuccessfully when they stopped him at the 1 on 4th down, and then the other was a 13-yard scramble to the one that set up the sneak, which I thought he got in, but whatever. Doesn't really matter. And then when blitzed, he was much better as well. This was something where he had struggled before the bye and struggled so far this year. He was really good at it last year, so we were hoping that he would maybe bounce back a little bit as the season went on, as maybe he got a little bit more mobility back. In this one, he was much better against the blitz. He was 2 of 3 for 68 yards, including that 60-yard bomb to Watson. And then the one incompletion was the Dobbs drop on 3rd and 3, where it was just that hit him in both hands. Please catch the ball, guys.
Yeah, you just got to reach all the way out and grab that ball.
But yeah, so I thought Love was really good in this game. Obviously, the pick is not great, but the rest of the game was, I thought, a really strong showing from him.
Yeah, and I think that one sack was really on a run play where he lost a yard.
Yeah, exactly. He scrambled out of bounds. Yeah, that's not even, that's another good handling of the blitz, in my opinion. I would say that's a decent outcome from getting blitzed at times. It's obviously not great that you don't gain yards, but it's not like you're taking a 10-yard sack.
Yeah, or at risk of sack fumble.
Exactly.
You're just running out of bounds. Yeah. So it's of all the sacks, it's either the one you'd most want to give up if you had to choose, and the kind of lamest one to count as a sack. Mm-hmm. It's more like a running play that lost a yard in the end.
Yeah, and he lost I thought it was just at the marker. I thought it was at the line of scrimmage. I thought it was a 0, whatever. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, so I thought he played well in this game. I have some other positives, but Dad, what did you have?
So think of the big picture. they got into the red zone on 5 of their 6 actual possessions, not counting the what one play kneel down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good. That's getting a lot of yards per drive, because it wasn't like they had a lot of short fields. They were moving the ball well on every drive but one. I thought Josh Jacobs had generally a good game. He's been not on the field as much as we wanted for high leverage plays. This week they gave him one pass blocking snap, and he did well with it. Gave his best pass blocking grade of the year, but it's only one. Of course, the other 2 running backs also only had one pass blocking snap each. So
I mean, there just weren't that many pass plays. Like we mentioned, Love only threw the ball 17 times.
Only 43 plays on offense overall.
It was a lightning fast game because neither team was getting stopped.
They were already starting, I think, the third quarter when some of the other teams in the early window hadn't even reached halftime yet.
Yeah.
Jacobs had the second highest PFF receiving grade for running backs on the week.
The snag he made on the one where Love missed him a little bit high, that was a really nice catch. Yeah.
Yeah. He had the second most running back receiving yards of the week with 58 yards on 4 catches from 5 targets. He also had a kind of nice 83% route participation, so they're really involving him in the passing game a lot. He set a season high in receiving yards, and it was the second highest in receiving yards in his career versus a game in 2022 against, it might have been Seattle, for 74 yards, something like that. Mm-hmm. He finished 9th on the week in yards from scrimmage with 134 yards. It was his best on the year and his second best of his career. And he also led the team with 7 first downs between rushing and receiving. I think it was like 5 rushing and 2 receiving first downs.
He continues to be like one of the best players on this offense, like week in, week out. He's been fantastic for Green Bay.
That's why we keep clamoring for him to get the ball.
More Jacobs. And I liked that they used him more in the passing game in this one. And I kind of mentioned it when we were talking about Love, like that I thought his decision-making was better in this one. I thought his willingness to get the ball to Jacobs, in check down situations, like that was like a very much a positive. And Jacobs like rewarded them for getting him the ball in the passing game because he did really well for it. We mentioned the one where he had that really nice catch and run. He had another dump off that he took for like, I think 14, 15 yards, maybe even 20 yards.
I think he had actually two receptions over 20 yards, I think, in the game.
Yeah, he was actually their highest targeted receiver on the day, which is an interesting stat. I think it was 5 targets. They obviously didn't throw the ball very much, but I don't mind that. Maybe because not all of them were checkdowns. I mean, actually, now that I think about it, maybe they all were checkdowns. But he's able to do stuff with the ball, like with the ball in his hands.
He was able to pluck the ball out of the air. I think they were all from the backfield, so it wasn't like they lined up in the slot.
I don't think that's really his game to go.
But he's able to. He's like pointing at the players where he's going to go.
The telling Jalen Johnson to come here, come get some. That was a fun moment. I like that a lot. He said, "Come get some. I'm layering the boom."
So he was good with the ball in his hands there out in space, and I'm all for it. And it also, if everything's locked up downfield, take advantage of it, and you're still getting double-digit yards.
Yeah, and just obviously, I mentioned before. I just want to clarify what I was saying. He was the highest targeted receiver. Obviously, you don't want your running back to necessarily be the highest targeted receiver. I think let me walk back what I said earlier. But I do think he should get more targets than he does usually. Like, I think maybe 5 targets is actually about right. It's just that they didn't throw the ball much at all.
Right.
Maybe 5 targets on like 30 dropbacks. But he's able to do more with the ball in his hands in the passing game than I think that they have asked him to do. And I like that they asked him to do a little bit more of that in this game. And I think that's actually where I stand. I just want to clarify what my point was there. But I like that he was, used as the dynamic weapon that he is, where he can help in both phases.
Yeah, and more than they had, than the Raiders had been using him for as well.
Yeah, and that catch is like that was a nice catch. That's a good catch. And breaking tackles, and he was really good in this one. He was one of their better skill position players. But we're burying the lead on who the best skill position player was in this game. Although maybe it was Jacobs, but Christian Watson, have a day. 4 catches for 150 yards, and like all of them really important catches they really needed.
Yeah, had 2 contested catches. That doesn't even count his diving catch.
I was going to say, none of them were easy either.
Run.
Like, most of them were hard. Most of them were difficult catches. Like, there's the one down the right hash that you mentioned where, he's in double coverage, contested catch, big catch. He has another one where it's a bit of a second reaction, not really a second reaction play, but Love's buying time in the pocket. He eventually rips one over to, Watson, who takes a hit and holds onto it. And then the biggest play of the game, or at least biggest play of the game before the block field goal, was just a diving catch, which excellent catch, fantastic catch. And Love does well to, as he's taking a hit and like lay it out there and give him a chance at it. And then the presence of mind to get up and start sprinting and to turn what would have been
30 yards off of that?
Yeah, I think it was going to be like a 20-yard catch. And I think he got like another 40 out of it. But yeah, no, get it all the way down to like the 13-yard line as opposed to being, more at midfield when you need a touchdown. I mean, a fantastic play from Watson. And may I say, is that his best game as a Packer?
Oh, overall? No, not as a Packer. I mean,
I think the Cowboys one where he had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I think you got to give that one more. But I think if this one had been like right on him, if Love been able to do that under duress, I think he
gone all the way.
I think gone all the way. I think
it's possible.
He blows by the defender there.
Yeah,
if he takes that in stride,
he's so fast. It's the fastest kid alive. But no, he was fantastic in this game, and it's great for him because he's a guy I think who gets a bit lost in the shuffle at times, and he's always doing the dirty work, never complains, and I think it's just awesome to see him have such a big day and a big game for Green Bay. The division games are always really important, and they could ill afford to fall to 0-3 in the division.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about ahead of time, how important this game was for the Packers. You don't want to use must win when you're 6-3 going in, but you didn't want to fall to 0-3 in the division.
Yeah,
and I would say that Watson, he doesn't always get so many targets, so people get down on him, but he also his gravity opens up possibilities for everybody else in the passing game.
Yeah, it's like everyone always used to rag on Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but you need a field stretcher. And also Watson's more than just a field stretcher. He's a really good blocker. He's got some size. He doesn't always play to that size as much as we would like, but he's a big body. He's getting better at contested catches, I think. Maybe getting a little bit better at it.
I think he's significantly better than MVS was, because one thing he has
but
he has a really good vertical.
Yeah, MVS had a terrible vertical.
He had a good broad, but no vertical.
No vertical. I think it was like a 30.5-inch vert, and it was just like, how does that make sense? Like, how are you so explosive? But no, yeah, I meant more just he's getting better at contested catches in terms of like his progression of his career. I feel like he's like last year we actually talked about how bad he was doing in contested catch situations for like the first half of the year, and he cleaned it up as the year went on. But this year, the big one in this one against the Bears, that was a big contested catch in double coverage that they really needed earlier in the game. But Dad, any other positives on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, so I'd say overall they turned out their best team receiving grade on the year according to PFF, and Love's targets had the most yards of separation on the week at 4.8 yards. And this is the most yards of separation on the season for Love when he's been throwing the ball.
I do wonder how much of that is how many throws to the running backs they had, because I think, like we mentioned,
running backs do have when
separation.
You look at players who lead in yards of separation on any given week, there's a lot of running backs at the top of that. So it could be that it's not parsed out for like running back only or wide receiver only. So that could be a big reason for it. I was also thinking like that one play to Watson had a pretty sizable amount of separation.
There's a good amount
of
separation there too, yeah. But yeah, because I was just thinking, I was like, was there any plays where people were just running wide open? It's like I don't really remember very much. I was like, the running backs were pretty open. I was wondering that.
Yeah, so it you could be right that it's that they were willing to throw to the running backs more. Watson though, he was for the league, he was first in yards per route run. Amongst players with more than like one
that's
target.
What happens when you have 4 catches for 150 yards.
With like
that's
10,
insane.
10 yards per route run. He had 4 first downs and was 2 for 2 on contested catches, like you mentioned. The pass blocking actually did some work today as well. By some metrics, the only sack they gave up was Love running out of bounds, and they gave up the 4th slowest time to pressure of the week at 3.53 seconds, which is also their best mark on the season.
Yeah, I thought that the pass blocking in this one was actually really, really good. I thought that they were, the Bears defense, I don't think, actually, I'm not sure where they rank in terms of pressure, but the Packers, were able to, like you mentioned, slow them down in terms of time to pressure. They were able to give Love pretty clean pockets for him to work with, most of the game. And overall on the day, I mean, he had the 3rd longest time to throw as well at 3.31 seconds. Only Lamar and Patrick Mahomes held the ball longer. So they were really able to, give him time to throw. And a lot of those big throws came on, kind of where he's just holding the ball back there. He's holding the ball back there. He's moving up in the pocket. He's moving back. And yeah, I thought the offensive line was fantastic in terms of pass blocking in this one, for sure.
Yeah, and so none of the offensive linemen were credited with a sack. Because that one they give to Love for running out of bounds there, a yard short. I don't know. It's like, okay, if you're a yard short, that sack's on you, buddy.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like
and only one hit. By Myers gave up one hit, and then a few hurries. But Walker had a really good pass blocking grade. Sean Ryan did as well.
Yeah. I thought the line was great in this one, and but yeah, I thought overall the offense was pretty good. Was pretty good in this one. There were still some negatives though, Dad. What do you have in this one? For me, it's just some of the same mistakes do still plague them, huh?
Yeah. I have some, and you probably overlap with some of you had, where you mentioned the red zone in your notes.
The red zone, it's a lot of the same problems where it's like they look so good 20-20, and then when they get in the red zone they bog down. 2 different trips where you score 0 points in like
that really hurts. You get nothing for those 2. Yes, so you got touchdowns on the other 3, but to come up with 0 on 2 of them. Yeah, the Bears, and whether it's talking about, okay, the Bears are the best in the red zone, and the Packers are whatever.
that was a mismatch. That was a mismatch. They showed that on the broadcast. I was like, yeah, no, the Bears defense really good in the red zone. The Packers offense really bad in the red zone. But no, yeah, the red zone was bad.
And I had some details on that. I felt like there's some inconsistency in the play calling or execution in the red zone. That 2-point conversion play was kind of a mess. There was not much in the way of misdirection or disguise. Plus, Walker got beat instantly by the defensive end to blow up. Was that also his name? Also Walker?
Oh, you might be right. Yeah, it might be
who tackled Jacobs there for no gain or a loss, so that they failed that 2-point conversion. And then they had multiple self-inflicted errors in the red zone possession that ended up in I think it's the one that ended up in the INT. So they're at the 5-yard line, 2nd and 1. It's like, okay, we're gonna do something here because we only need 1 yard in the next couple of plays to get like 1st and goal inside the 5. So we're in really good shape. Well, penalty. Now
I will say I mentioned that a lot of the same errors plagued them in this one, and that goes for the red zone. That goes for the turnover that Love threw in the red zone, which is part of the red zone and also part of the turnover issues that they've had. And then we already talked about the drop that Dobbs had on 3rd and 3, which was tough. But that was the only penalty they had on offense the entire game. So that's at least something. That was one place where they did clean it up a little bit. But that was like go ahead though. 2nd and 1 went to 2nd and 6. That
particular penalty, I think it was
ineligible downfield. So
it's
one of those where it's
sort
not
of slow
actually
developing throw in the end.
They were doing an RPO type deal, I think, if I remember correctly.
And so by
the
time
quite get it off, and it's just one of those. The timing got all messed up.
It's like, okay, well, they must be running by now.
Yeah,
we're going downfield.
So if you don't know on those plays, listeners, the RPO is a run pass option. The quarterback either hands the ball off to run or pulls it and throws it immediately. The line is instructed on those plays to run block, and so they're driving upfield. And the idea is that if the quarterback throws it, he'll be throwing it fast, so the line doesn't need to worry about being too far downfield. But in the case where you'll see this happen sometimes is, someone jumped the passing lane, the quarterback can't throw it, he has to pump, he has to wait, and then he throws it later, then the line who was run blocking, because they're supposed to be blocking for the run play side of that play, is now too far downfield, and then you end up moving backwards. But so like you mentioned, Dad, let's pick it back up at 2nd and 6. So they're at 2nd and 6 now.
Yeah, so I didn't like the call there where they had that run play to Reed for another 5-yard loss.
We talked about it a few weeks ago. The end arounds have been figured out. They have been fully figured out. They need to cut them out for probably a month. They need to not run any more of those.
I haven't seen one succeed in a while. And then it's a bad play call down close to the goal line because all the defenders are up close to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah,
I think it's just a mistake by the coaching staff to call that play there. I think you may have mentioned something about a bad block execution. I don't know who it was by. I have to look at that a little more carefully. But that play, just the chance of it succeeding is not good. And so then they lose another 5.
I mean, it harkens back to
now
the game
they're really in bed.
It harkens back to the game against the Lions where it was 3rd and 1, 2nd and 1, and they're inside their own 10, and they ran that end around and lost 2 yards. Like they just need to stop doing them for a little bit. They're not working.
Yeah. And so that set him up for you were at 3rd and 11 from the 16.
And that was, and then that was the pick, right?
And then there was the pick.
Yeah.
On the overthrow. So it was like several unforced errors.
Yeah.
Penalty, bad play call, or blocking, and then the overthrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with Kraft looking like, is that to me? Should I not reach out for it and deflect it again?
His down at the end, but I mean, it's an overthrow.
It's like, oh, maybe, yeah. So
I don't think he's going to catch it anyway. Yeah.
Probably, I'm looking at that as like, he could have got a hand on it and popped it up in the air. And then we'd all be going bonkers because the ball popped up in the air and then got picked.
Yeah, exactly. And, the last time that happened with Kraft was in the NFC divisional game. So maybe he's thinking about that a little bit too.
Well, I was thinking about the Musgrave Dobbs play earlier in the year.
You remember the Kraft one I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah,
so
where
crosser over the middle hits him in the hands,
and then it goes right to is it not Warner? I
think it was Greenlaw that
Greenlaw.
ended up picking that. But yeah,
Greenlaw.
Tough. Yeah, it's tough that a lot of the same issues persisted after the bye. I think a lot of us were hoping they would get cleaned up. The penalties did get cleaned up a little bit in this game, so that's at least something to, that's good. They only had the one drop, although it was a really tough drop on 3rd down. So there's at least that. But the red zone issues are really killing them, and they gotta clean it up. They have to. I have no problem though. Some people were complaining online. I have no problem with going for it there on 4th down, right? On the other one where they got 0 points, where they failed the 4th down. I got no problem with that. No problem with that at all.
I think I had more of a problem with the back-to-back run plays. Is that the one with back-to-back run plays? They're not doing anything. And then they do the scramble and they go for it. Is that?
That's the thing is on that one. So on 3rd and goal from 2nd and goal from the 9, Josh Jacobs runs 4 yards to the 5, and then 3rd and goal at the 5. Jordan Love, that's the -1 run out of bounds sack. That's like they're kind of sprinting out to the right, and there's nothing really there. And if I remember correctly, and then the 4th and goal, he tries to run it himself and gets it down to the 1. I got no problem with going for it on 4th down there. That's fine.
Yeah, I think he just has to throw it.
Yeah.
It's a pick,
he got to the 1, but he got to the 1. Like he's right there.
There were 4 guys there.
Yeah, there were 4 guys hanging on.
4 guys there.
That's also fair.
He was not. It's like, I'm looking at that. It's like, there's no way he's going to make it.
Yeah.
You got to be, built like Derrick Henry or something if you're going to get in with
on a
4
4th
guys
down,
in the
maybe
way.
you just got to put it up. But yeah, those are the negatives for the offense.
That was my main quibble with that play is I think he's like, you just gotta throw it for grabs and hope somebody comes down with it because there are too many defenders in between you and the goal line. When I see him start to go for it when he crosses the line of scrimmage, I'm like, there are 4 guys there. He's not going to make it.
Yeah. But Dad, let's wrap things or any things that made you think on the offensive side. I already mentioned mine that Jacobs was the highest targeted receiver. That made me think, and I was like, oh, that's like, I already talked about it, but I like that they're using him more in the passing game, and I like that they're checking down to running backs a little bit more. Obviously, you don't want the running back to be the most targeted guy. You don't want it all to be checkdowns, but I do like that they are checking it down a bit more and getting it in the hands of one of their elite playmakers in Jacobs a little bit more in the passing game.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to revisit some of what we talked a little bit about in the pregame, since it actually came to something. So I'll call that back up again since it meant something this time.
Yep.
Forget
those
about
the ones you
times.
have to. Those are the ones. Why do a pregame if you can't bring up the parts you were right about afterwards? Like, what's the point?
So we talked about kind of the play design and choice, so what they're going to be doing. So with Love maybe getting his legs healthier, this was the 2nd highest percentage of play action for Love on the season, behind only the Arizona game. And these 2 games are also Love's 2 best games by EPA per dropback.
Yep.
So he's feeling a little better, able to move more. They also ran 33% of their plays under center, which is way above the season's average of 19%, and even above last year's percentage of 28%. So if you're looking for a few more nuggets that Love is feeling better, besides just what the eye test was, because that rollout and rip to Dobbs early in the games, like, oh, that looked really, really good. Really good ability to throw on the move.
Yeah, he looked a lot more comfortable on the move in this one for sure, and was
able
making
to get
plays
velocity
with his legs
while running.
Yeah, and hopefully that can just continue throughout the rest of the year. Knock on wood. But yeah, so that does it for the offense, Dad. Let's move on to the belle of the ball, Special teams? Who would have thought? Comeback player of the year, our special teams? I mean, the game-winning play. The game-winning play. And I am someone, I'm going to take the reins here, Dad, because I am Mr. Hate our special teams, and I'm well known for that at this point. But, I mean, shout out to Rich Bisaccia. And this is coming from, I have been a big Rich Bisaccia critic, and I think at times fairly, his units have not lived up to the billing through a couple years here in Green Bay. But this here is an example of some excellent coaching from Rich Bisaccia. So apparently, going into this game, they saw something on tape about the way that they protected the interior and about the way that Cairo Santos, the Bears kicker, had a lower trajectory on longer kicks. And Karl Brooks talked about, the plan was, I'm getting to the A-gap, and I'm just getting pushed, and I'm getting up there. And him and Slayton, and then Lucas Van Ness was like, I just had to push Karl Brooks, which is technically a penalty. You're not allowed to push anyone on the kick, but I won't tell anyone if you don't. I'm not a narc, but who cares? They didn't call it. And Rich Bisaccia apparently said the night before the game, according to Matt LaFleur, quote, this isn't a Rich Bisaccia quote, but this is Matt LaFleur saying what Rich Bisaccia said, quote, I will not understand if we come out of this game without a block, end quote. And I mean, what fantastic coaching to have your guys prepared, have something specific on tape for them to attack, and then it comes to fruition in the biggest moment of the game to win the game. I mean, shout out to Rich Bisaccia, shout out to the special team, shout out to Karl Brooks. Fantastic. 10 out of 10. No notes.
Yeah, it was a game ball to Karl Brooks.
Karl Brooks got the one game ball. Yeah, he got just the tip, the bittest tip of his finger on it.
See, but that ball just died after when I first saw it. It's like, wait, what happened?
I do wonder about
it. Must have been blocked.
I do wonder about the what was I going to say? The logic of having one of your least athletic linemen be the guy trying to jump and block the kick. But whatever, it worked. I don't care.
I didn't have a look. Yeah, I know overall his RAS is like 3 something as opposed
I don't
to
think he's
9
got much
something
hops.
like the rest of them.
His hops are not amazing.
His hops, like
hey,
Slayton, he can dunk a basketball at 330 pounds.
But hey, what do I know? Who cares?
It worked.
Maybe, yeah. I'm an idiot. here talking into a microphone. They got the block. Who cares?
Maybe they trust Brooks to be able to penetrate that A gap.
That's true. He has he has a quicker get off. I feel like than most of
get into that backfield there.
That's a very good point. Yeah, he might not have the hops and the vertical leaping ability of a lot of their linemen, but I feel like off the ball he is one of their quicker guys, and that was the key to the play was his get off the ball and getting past the left guard there. I think it's Pryor for the Bears and getting into that A gap.
He just beats him and is splitting the blockers.
The slow motion of that play where you can see from behind the Bears kicker or it's zoomed in it's just zoomed in on Karl Brooks and his eyes are wide open staring at the ball as he's firing off and he is so locked in. And this was something that I actually wanted to talk about as well, which I also want to commend Rich Bisaccia on, and Matt LaFleur talked about it as well. They both talked about how they consider field goal block to be I believe the word was heartbeat of the team, because it is so easy to go out there and just
go through the motions.
How often are you gonna block a kick? Almost never are you gonna block a kick. It's very easy to go out there and just go through the motions. Oftentimes you're going out there after you just gave up a touchdown, so you're extra demoralized. But they pressed on the fact that the effort you give on those plays is the heartbeat of the team, and it sets the tone for the team for what kind of team you want to be. And I had never really heard of it talked about that way before, but for them to talk about that and for the players to kind of internalize that, that's another, hallmark of a well-coached team.
Yeah. And yeah, in some ways it's not much more exciting than blocking a kick for the win. I guess the other would be returning a kick for a win.
Returning a blocked kick for a win.
Oh, returning a block kick for a win.
That would be but hey, let's not get greedy. I'll take a block kick for a win. But yeah, we talked about coming into this, as we close up here, but I mean, what an awesome way to win a game. Obviously the game was not as clean as we would have liked, but hey, I'll take it. Ugly win, better than a pretty loss. Anything else on the special teams though, Dad, you wanted to touch on?
There wasn't much to talk about in terms of the kick return game or the kickoff game. They only had one punt, but Wheeling put it at the 5, I think. It's somewhere inside the 10. And they had, I guess, one fair catch and one good punt return by Reed for 16 yards to
it was good.
Get him out of the shadow of the goal line and get a little bit better starting position, which then I think was that for their last touchdown?
I believe so. I can't remember off the top of my head though, actually.
Yeah, that was his 16-yard punt return to get him to the 22, and then they scored the go-ahead touchdown on that ensuing possession.
Every yard counted. Every yard indeed. But anyway, Dad, let's wrap things up here. Player of the game, who you got?
So I switched mine. I'm going back. I'm going with Karl Brooks.
Got him. That's fair. Totally fair.
Man of the last second.
He got the one game ball from the team, and that was the point of difference, was that block kick. The point of his finger was the point of difference. I went with Christian Watson. I don't think, I don't think they win this game without him either. So
nope.
And he, 4 for 150 is pretty fantastic.
I mean, that big catch he made to set up the score.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Go ahead.
And really was, he had 150 of their not that many yards of offense. So he was pretty much half their offense on the day, and certainly more than half of their passing offense. But yeah, so I think those are both totally worthy selections for that one. But Dad, let's wrap things up here. Anything more you wanted to touch on?
I think that's it. So
okay,
we went after a bye.
Yep, 7-3, 6th in the NFC. Just gotta keep moving along. San Francisco comes to town this next week. We'll be giving you a pregame for that coming up. Big matchup there. San Francisco very desperate. Packers need a win as well. Need to keep building momentum as the season goes on. But we'll be talking all about that later this week. Thank you again so much for listening. Please subscribe. We would really appreciate it. Please leave a review, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all three. We'd really appreciate it. Follow us on Twitter at FatherSonPacker for latest injury updates, whenever new episodes come out, notifications on that, roster moves, other content from other Packers content creators, et cetera, et cetera. And until next time,
hopefully we'll get the Father Son on Blue Sky. We're both individually on Blue Sky.
Yeah,
we just need to get the podcasts on Blue Sky.
Yeah, so go check those out. And thank you so much for listening. Ugly win, better than a pretty loss any day of the week. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.